If you're just joining, take a look at that poll that you see on your screen. Go ahead and answer those questions and submit those. So many of you likely already know who CCLR is, or the Center for Creative Land Recycling. You might have worked with us in one-on-one technical assistance. You might have sent us your EPA Mark Grant draft for us to review, or you might have seen the newsletter and clicked on this link. But just in case you're new to CCLR, we are the Center for Creative Land Recycling, and we're the technical assistance to Brownfields or tab provider for EPA's Regions 9 and 10. Today's webinar, however, will be relevant for a national audience. As a bit more background, we provide in-depth technical assistance to communities that are working on all aspects of land recycling, and this includes our annual EPA MAC grant review services. Our team provides in-depth redline comments to support your application and being selected for funding. My name is Devin Rainwater, and I'm a program manager at CCLR. And I have the wonderful honor of being the program lead for our MAC draft review team every year when the EPA Brownfields grants come out. And my colleague Joelle Greenland, who will be presenting the webinar today, is a very key part of our MAC review team and works year-round with clients and nonprofits that are tackling the oftentimes complicated endeavor of funding brownfields work. So Joelle has an excellent in-depth webinar for you to help you better tackle what to do during this sort of waiting period after the EPA grants have closed. And spoiler alert, it's definitely not just waiting. So we're really excited to kind of guide you through this time. If you have questions during the webinar, please add them into the Q&A box. We'll have specific time for questions and discussions, and we'll be monitoring the Q&A box. Actually, it looks like we just have a chat box. So just go ahead and put your questions into the chat, and we'll be having a discussion period to look over and respond to those questions. I'd also love to shout out my colleague, Paige Dawson, who is our Senior Events and Programs Associate. She'll be running the back end of this webinar, and without her, this event would not be possible. So thank you to Paige. And then with that, I'll pass it over to Joelle to take you through the webinar.
Thanks, Devin. Appreciate that. Hello, everyone. It looks like we have at least half that had registered. So we're going to go because we've got a chock full webinar here. And okay, so just a few quick notes. Yes, it's being recorded. Everybody heard the recording thing saying we're being recorded. So it's being recorded. You will get a link to the recording as well as a specific resource that will help you with remembering all the action items that are in this webinar. So as Devin said, chat box, use it for any technical issues. Paige will jump on and help you, links and resources, and also your questions. So hopefully, the agenda for the webinar is 90 minutes, right? And so 25, 25, 25, and 15. I'm hoping that we will get through this a little quicker so that we can get more questions and just have conversation about now what and the mindsets and where you are. I've been looking at the poll and seeing very interesting answers. Some I definitely expected, others have definitely piqued my interest. So we'll get to those. So who's who in this poll response? So looks like a lot of you applied for a community-wide assessment grant, or what we call CWA. And looks like it's pulled ahead of the cleanup grants. But this year we saw an inordinate amount of cleanup grants this year, more than any other year, probably because the bill funding is sunsetting this June. So got that. Now the NA not applicable intrigues me. So I'll leave that in the chat box or something. You guys have to let me know who are the three people who are not applicable here. But we've got FY23. Nice. Okay. And 24 and 25. Very good. Okay. Awesome. And even some people were applying on the future. Again, those NAs and then the status. Yes, I figured many of you are pending decisions and good to see accepted. And one not accepted, would love to hear what you did and how to pivot with purpose, which we will get to. Okay, so hopefully you see this on your screen too. So 76% of you are pending decisions, 83% of you applied for an FY26. Okay, and community-wide and cleanup are neck and neck with 11, 15, 18, kind of that area. Okay, so here we go. Gonna move on. Now we know who's in the room, and I'm sure we'll get more people. Okay, why this webinar, right? So for most of you, many of you who I've worked with, had the pleasure of working with, and some of you who have not been introduced to me, I am a lifelong Brownfield practitioner. It's in my blood. And I have worked with and managed every single one of these Brownfield grants. Ran an RLF, uh, cleanup, hazardous waste back even when the grants were split, right? So you name it, I've been there, I've been in the trenches, I know the pain. Okay, so this is basically that waiting. The impetus of this webinar was, what do you do now? And I would guess if we were going to do another poll, but I wasn't going to call you out, but I would guess that if we did another poll and the question was, how many have done anything since the time that you submitted your application, that waiting period that we're in now, have picked up the application or have done anything since the time that they pressed submit on January 28th? Most likely, everybody's like, great, that's done. That pain is over, and we're moving on to our day jobs and just moving forward, right? And hopefully, fingers crossed, in May or June. Okay. This is about the critical time now that should absolutely not be wasted. And so this first part is for universally for everyone. What are they doing? What are you doing now? Okay. So that determines. So I just kind of briefly went over the time frame. Most of you probably already know, but you submitted the applications in late January. May, June is typically the announcement awards. Those that are selected will get an email approximately 2 weeks before the public, the general public knows. So if you see the public award and you didn't get an email, you probably did get an email that said you were not selected. So either way, you're going to hear, right, prior to the actual public notice that comes out. So, and then of course, the NOFO comes out in September, usually, but as we all saw this past funding round, it didn't come out till late November. That was also because the government shut down. So this year, who knows? But what you do now absolutely determines how you will be successful. So let's get into it. Segment one, this is for everyone, right? All applicants, for everyone, whether you are picked or not picked. So first and foremost, anyone who has worked with me knows I always am asking the why. Why? Why? Let's first talk about your why. And what I mean is, you need to be asking yourself, why did you apply? Why these partners? Why this site? Why now? Like, I'm going to be asking you these questions, okay? So is it is it the answer of, well, this consultant said you should apply for these brownfield, funds. And you're like, sure, why not? You're going to write the grant for free, sure, right? Hopefully that's not the why. Because honestly, you're going to need to be able to communicate your why to many people. It's essentially your elevator pitch. If you were an entrepreneur, right? The elevator pitch, 30 seconds or less. Why are you doing what you're doing? Okay. And it's not, oh, to clean up this site. Oh, it's to do assessments. Oh, it's to get us ready. Ready for what? You need to dig deeper than just cleaning up the site. Why are you cleaning up the site? Well, because we did X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. Our, comp plan says, if you've got those all figured out and you can say it very concisely, you're going to be well ahead of everybody else, even if you don't get selected, you're ready for other funding opportunities because you've solidified this why and why you're partners and this clear vision that you can also communicate to your state legislative, maybe for earmarks, we'll get into that later, to other partnerships, to other funding opportunities. You will absolutely need this. Okay. It sounds like duh, Joelle 101, but I cannot tell you how many people cannot tell me why. All right. So know that first. Second and foremost, please, I hope everyone has created a master folder, whether electronically or paper or both. This will serve to save a lot of time and effort, especially since Devin and Devin can probably tell you too, that we see a lot of staffing changes between the time that an application is submitted to the time when it is actually being, worked on as far as the documents that you need and everything to get the actual cooperative agreement. So a master folder helps you save a lot of time. It sets you up for success because you want to put in the following things. All those forms, remember all those forms? The SF-424, the SF-424A, the 5700A, right? Guess what? That's not the last time you've seen them. So if you do get selected, you're going to need these forms again. Now, can you see, you're like, oh, Joelle, can we just see, use the same thing? Sure, but the date has to be updated. Okay. And yeah, so if you had them in PDF, you should be able to edit the PDF. We have, editing capabilities for PDFs too. Just, reach out to CCLR or whatever. You know, we're here to help. Attachments, support letters. No, we all know that there are no letters or recommendations, right? That they're not required in the application, they're not even allowed. But the support letters, like site characterizations from the state environmental agencies, you want that in your folder. You want any letters that talked about leveraging funds, those sort of things, okay? Anything that you used to put together your application should be in this master folder, okay? The last part, please, please, please tell people if it's password protected, what's the password? If it is on someone's computer, make sure other people, at least one or two people, know where this master folder lives, right? And if it's in paper format, let someone else know where it is. You can keep it in paper format, right? It's probably going to become, if you are selected, part of the administrative record, okay? Doesn't mean you need to make it public, but you need to make it available to the public, okay? Two different things. You do not need to post all this stuff on your website when you're selected, okay? You never need to do that. All right, moving on. Internal debrief. Okay, guys, we're not playing the blame game. This is what we call a blameless autopsy. Your team is going to get together and you're going to basically say, let's look at our application, okay? What did we struggle with? What worked well? What didn't work well? What did we struggle on? Put this, all this stuff, document this debrief in your master folder, kind of thing, assign follow-up tasks, right? Hey, you know what? We really didn't feel very, strong in the data, or we should have reached out to our partners way sooner. We should have started a lot earlier, right? So you're leaving breadcrumbs, right? But the internal debrief is also going to be used to compare against your EPA debrief if you are not selected. Okay, so put a pin in this one because we're going to come back to it. Okay, strengthening foundations, right? This part of this webinar is for everyone. You may have the best application and you think, for sure, we got this in the bag. These are highly, highly competitive grants, right? About 30% are awarded across the country. And at different levels, there's more CWAs and less $4 million cleanup grants. Who even knows what kind of funding we're going to see next year. But you want to, during this 6 to 8 week period time, It could be longer, right? Who knows? But now is the time to be strengthening those relationships. You know, all those partners that you put in that table. Um, and you say, yeah, we've got such great relationships with this tribe or with this agency and this, that. If you haven't reached out to them since that time frame, please send them an email, even if it's, hey, sorry for the delay, but we wanted to circle back and let you know that we did submit our application and, you know, we should be hearing in May or June. And should we get it, we can't wait to be, working together. You need to be strengthening those relationships, just re-engaging, right? Also think about possible target areas too, because I know you put the target areas in, but what about future target areas? What about complementary target areas? Um, the other thing is, I know you're like, oh God, the site inventory, right? Look, this is not supposed to be something that is arduous or expensive. Okay. Great if you have a GIS department and you have funding to connect you have a whole brownfields layer in county government where I once worked. Yeah, we had a GIS department, and yes, it was great to build out a brownfields inventory that was a GIS layer. However, I also worked in a smaller local government, a regional planning commission. We didn't have this. So it is just as powerful, okay, um, as just having a notebook, a pad of paper, and going out and walking the neighborhood, right? Remember, what's your why? Why this neighborhood, right? Why this block? Why this part of the neighborhood? Um, and just creating a simple inventory of, that's an underutilized property. What's going on there? It's blighted, it's not blighted, but it seems inactive, right? Remember the definition of a brownfield: perceived or actual contamination that is, thwarting, or probably EPA doesn't use the word for it, but everybody knows the definition as far as impeding redevelopment, right? For us, it's usually underutilized properties, like, right, what's its highest and best use? Property identifier, site use, environmental evaluation. You can get this all from public resources. Okay, we'll get to that later. So, what's your action item? This: identify 3 priority sites. I'm bringing this up now because whether you're selected or not selected, right? Eligibility of sites is not determined during the grant application process. That is a separate process. So your sites that might be priority might also not be eligible. So, having said that, start thinking about other sites, talk to property owners, get a rapport, just think about some of these things. Okay. Yes, we're going to have these action items throughout the webinar. Next thing, data gaps. Now, in certain sections, when we were reviewing grants, these were the 2 sections that we saw constantly where there was a forced nexus, right? You had usually, you have in the first part, it's tell us of your target area and your brownfields challenge, right? And then you get into the community need and community engagement. Um, and there's always this kind of, let's grab the data. Let's just, what's the community need and health disparities and stuff. And I cannot tell you that broad strokes are usually always there. And by that, I mean, like, there's really not a strong nexus between that first section and these sections. So these are questions that coming up with as far as just, were the numbers really, indicated, like, were they there? Were they really, tied to the brownfield change, challenges? Are there gaps in the narratives? And you're just kind of like, let's just kind of gloss over that and see if reviewer just kind of makes the same leap with us. You should always be asking yourself, what could make our story more compelling, stronger, really pull in the reviewer, right? say, oh yeah, it's not enough to just say our community is rural and we're low income, and because of these brownfields, we've lost jobs. Okay, that may be the case, but you need to now back it up and also provide the why behind each one of those statements. Okay, collecting data now, these are some of the things just listing out as far as the Center for Disease Control, the United States Department of Agricultural, FEMA, right? All these other agencies do have data that you can think about collecting. So here's your action item, right? Just identify one and kind of like get that solidified. All right. Just pick one. If you haven't thought about it, now's the time. Relationship building. This is really key. We're ending on this one for this segment because just like I said, throwing people into your application and never having met them. COGS are great for this because they are in touch with so many communities. COGS are my God, consular governments, sorry, yeah, like an MPO, municipal planning organization. So, as far as, yeah, probably EPA doesn't want to hear from you, but we're not talking about pestering. It's just an email or a phone call that just says, hey, we did apply and we're really excited. And hey, it may or may not work out, but we just wanted you to be aware of our project and you know, that's really a focal point in our, you know, area for these reasons. And if there's ever an opportunity for other funding, like targeted brownfield assessments or land revitalization funds, those are separate from the brownfield mark grants. Those are funding opportunities that are outside. So it behooves you for other agencies and partners like private sectors and stuff to know about your projects, right? The more that you talk about them, the more, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So the more that you talk about it, you're basically, you know, rolling out the welcome mat to have conversations, to have partnerships, and to see if there's any symbiotic relationships that can, serve to benefit both parties. So let's not forget earmarks too. They are back, they're still here. Um, Reaching out to your state representatives is also very key. I work with two communities that got congressionally directed funds, and it was very, very key to have constant communications with their offices, their offices and their representatives to see, and they did. After several years, they got several $1 million for their projects. So, with that, here's your action item. I know you got homework with this webinar, right? And these will all be in that resource. Okay. So schedule a informational meeting with a non-EPA partner. Okay. All right. Now, I was going to put some time frames in here for you, but I took them all out so that it wouldn't be too onerous. All right. But set up your own deadlines, within a week of this webinar. Just set up the appointment. You don't have to have the meeting. Just schedule an informational meeting, right? Okay. The inventory, just take a walk down a block, okay, in your community or something, right? Just kind of just do an observatory or what we call a windshield survey walk. All right. Recap. You're going to get a recap after every one of these sections, right? I'm not going to recap. I'm not going to read the recap. Okay. But basically, we're scheduling, we're identifying, and we're scheduling. All right. Okay. We're right on time. Segment 2. Now, I know everyone who applied this past January wants to be in the selected. We want you to be in the selected, okay? So we want you to be ready to hit the ground running because I wish I had sound. I mean, I do have sound, but this is what it's going to feel like, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. instead of reading reality, this should be onslaught, okay? In a pleasant way, if you will. So the post-award reality is this. You're going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. And anyone who has received, a grant selected for one, right? That first email is quite the doozy, right? And at the very beginning, there's a lot to be done. So we're going to shine some light on what that would look like. Okay, some of you may have seen this slide from other webinars that I've done, but this is no joke, okay? Read the award email. Now, you also need to know, remember when I said about knowing your team and who's on that 5700A, the key contacts form, right? That email is the one that the award email will come to, or I should say the selectee, okay? You've been selected, okay, for a cooperative agreement. So you're going to need to read this email and you're going to need to make sure that that person is looking out for this email, right? It's a very long one. It has tons and tons of resources on it, okay? Lots, I mean, it's like the kitchen sink. Everything's in there, right? You do not want to lose that email. What you're going to expect, right? First and foremost, you are a selectee, or an awardee, but you're a selectee. You are not a grantee. So heads up, this is when you have to read the fine print. So there are terms and conditions, both programmatic and administrative, all right? You're going to make, like programmatic is like, oh, we're going to do environmental site assessments and, cleanup. Yeah, okay. Administrative is all that reporting stuff, right? Won't go over the 5% cap, that sort of thing, right? Okay, just broke something. Okay, anyway. So the first thing is, remember those forms that I was talking about in the master folder? All those forms need to be updated and provided immediately, okay? So now you're dealing with the world of federal awards, federal grant, okay? So there are very strict requirements and timing that need to be, checked off immediately. And you're now working with a project manager in Region 10 or a project officer in Region 9. They have to get certain documents into the grants management office, right, in order for you to get a cooperative agreement. Now, I want to clear up one of the myths. When people say we signed our cooperative agreement, or EPA and us will sign the cooperative agreement, there is no signing. You don't sign the cooperative agreement. What you get is you have a draft work plan. Now, this is assuming you've gotten all those updated forms in. Draft work plan, and you get that in. We'll talk about the draft work plan, and you get that in, and it goes in. And you're like, is it going to come back? Safe to say that if there's radio silent on your draft work plan, there's a good chance that it went on to grants management, that the EPA project manager, project officer is, I'm just going to say project officer from here on out, okay? But it means project manager too. That they have sent it off to grants management office. They are reviewing it. Once it checks all the boxes for grants management, then it goes on to HQ, headquarters, right? And it starts going through getting a cooperative agreement. At which time, hopefully before October 1st, the start of the federal fiscal year, you're going to get in your mail, that same person again, that email is very important, right? Is going to get, woo, the cooperative agreement. Congratulations. Here's your cooperative agreement. Are you going to get your work plan? No. So you are now going to take that work plan, put it into your master folder, right? Now, instead of it saying draft, you're going to take the FAIN number, or the Federal Applicant Information Number, FAIN, or your Brownfields number, and you're going to put it into that draft work plan on the front page, okay? You now have your approved work plan and your approved cooperative agreement. Okay, these are legally binding documents. All right. That said, no approved work plan, no grant. Okay. So let's get into the first things that you need to do. First thing, remember, you've been selected. Yay, congratulations. What to expect when you're expecting an EPA grant. So identify your roles and responsibilities. Here are some. Here are the most common, right, that you're probably going to need. Your action item is to designate and identify the roles, decision-making authority, and communication protocols between these roles, if you will, but your internal team roster. Okay, so you've identified the roles, the responsibilities, and now your action item is to create your project team roster. So, who is the project manager? And making sure that all those key people are also matching the 5700A form for EPA, which is the key context form. Please make sure that your key context form is always up to date. That is a compliance issue. If it is not up to date, immediately notify your project officer that it needs to be updated and get it to them. If it is not updated and it has changed, this could be a compliance, it's definitely a compliance issue and they can take corrective actions. So don't take any chances with that. It's a very simple form. Okay. So make sure you also have a meeting schedule, guys. Like, don't put it all on one person. Like, if you have, even at the Planning Commission, there weren't, many. Like, it's like one woman show plus a finance person, an executive director every once in a while, would get together, we'd talk about what was going on. But we all knew what was going on so that if for any chance one of us was out for an extended period of time or sick or whatever, and there's something due, there's backups. Okay. Cross training. Okay. Get your weights on. Draft work plan boot camp. Okay. And it is boot camp. All right. So here is, you can also review a CCLR webinar that I did that is called Dynamic Blueprints. And it's everything you need to know about your work plan, how to create one. The thing is that there's a disconnect, right? For any of you who worked with a consultant while you're writing your grant, right, which is perfectly fine. They cannot, if they intend on bidding for the work, help you with drafting the work plan. Okay. So then you say, okay, Joelle, well, this is interesting because EPA is telling us that you need to stay within the spirit of your application and you're going to kind of copy paste. If you used a consultant and you are just copy pasting from your grant, okay, obviously the budget, right? But the budget needs to, they keep saying, remain in the spirit of things, right? Okay, so you can't dramatically change your grant. Like, let's say, oh, well, we should have put $100,000 into personnel. We're just going to yoink that from contractual. Okay, that's not such a great idea. I always tell people, look, you can change your budget, you can modify your work plan right now. You are trying to get an approved cooperative agreement. So if it has to change from what you originally applied, because there is definitely something that right off the bat you need to change, okay, discuss it with your project officer. However, you really want to you want to be as close to what you said in your application so that when somebody's looking at a grants management, they're like, oh yeah, it's essentially the same. Great. There's no significant changes here. Then once you get into the grant, this is a living document. You want to modify. You want to yearly be looking at, for those of you who have your FY 23, 24, 25, if you have never looked at your work plan and it's never been modified, I can guarantee you that you probably need to modify it. Especially if you are getting close to closing out your grant, you want to make sure that that work plan almost matches what your closeout report will look like. For instance, if you said you were going to do 26 phase ones and you have 6 months left in the grant and you've only done 17, you want to modify your work plan. Okay? Justifications. So, details. I cannot stress this enough. In the budgets, details, details. This is the one area that the work plan gets rejected most of the times. It just keeps coming back. When I say rejected, you are going to do a draft work plan. CCLR team can help with that. And then you're going to submit it to your project officer, and they're going to, read through it, and then they're going to give you some pointers, maybe make some tweaks, maybe it comes back to you, maybe they say, you're awesome, this looks great, right? And then they're going to say, wait a minute, you have $5,000 for supplies, but you just said office supplies. Yeah, office supplies, you're going to definitely get that rejected. They want to know computer, okay, laptop or desk, right? Laptop, all right. Personal protection equipment, right? You're not paying for the contractors, maybe your staff needs that. A mouse, a field phone, I don't know, pencils, but somebody put down $5,000 for supplies and they said pens and paper. And I said, that is a lot of pens and paper, $5,000. So, it is the supplies that it takes to basically run the grant. Okay. So needs to be very specific. Um, it's your playbook. You should always have this on your desk or within an arm's reach, that so you know whether or not the activities that you're doing are in the work plan. If they're not in the work plan, then they're most likely not going to be reimbursed. So always, always, always make sure that everything that's in your work plan is matching the activities that are actually happening. Um, and it's one word, not to be confused with the cleanup work plan, which is 2 words. Okay. Don't ask me why. Anyway, here are the components of a work plan. Kind of looks like the grant application, right? Oh, and by the way, the project overview, throw that stuff into like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, whatever it is that, Claude, whatever it is, Gemini, and narrow it down. All right. You do not need the huge narrative from the grant application into the project description. Okay. You just don't. Nobody wants a 40-page, work plan. Um, Again, it's the playbook. It's enough to provide someone with what are you doing with this money, right? Okay. So these are the major components, and you will get a work plan template. So remember that CVS email? You will have in there a work plan template, and all the language, the instructions that are template language are in blue font. So the final draft of your work plan that's going to go to grants management office should not have any blue words in it. Okay. None of it should be highlighted blue. Okay. It's a dead giveaway. So, I think that is it. Blue language. Okay, great. All right. Financial housekeeping. It's really important. Hopefully, everyone who has applied, right, and still has a grant has an active, unique entity identification. This is in place of years ago, probably now like 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago. Used to have Dunn's number. Remember Dunn's and Bradstreet? Okay, the Dunn's number. That's no longer. And now we have unique entity IDs or identification numbers. They must be active. Okay, so you're going to make sure that you're going to log into SAMS.gov and make sure that your registration matches the application, right? The applicant's name. Okay. And you're going to make sure that it is not expired. You will not get a annual reminder, right? It's up to you. So put it on your calendar for a yearly reminder, like a week before or something. But it can't expire. And right now, these are taking several weeks to get. It used to be very quick, and now for whatever reason, I've heard them taking weeks. So just don't mess with that. All right. Number two, this is one of the most frequent questions we get when we are doing budgets for the applications and the work plans. What's my indirect cost rate? I do not know what your indirect cost rate is. That's the simple answer. Because your organization negotiates an indirect cost rate, or they take the de minimis rate, okay, which is 10%. You want to always be documenting. And when I say document, that's that master folder again, right? Document the rate approval if it is higher than the de minimis rate. This is a whole separate webinar, but if you have questions about indirect cost rates, please reach out to CCLR and we'll answer your questions. The main thing that you need to remember is you may have an indirect cost rate of, say, I don't know, 35%. Let's just say, I don't know. It's kind of high, but anyway, you may have an indirect cost rate of, 35%, let's just say, but that doesn't mean it's 35% of the grant. You still cannot use more than 5% is the administrative cap of the entire grant. Okay? All right, great. So essentially, it's the negotiated pre-approved percentage, um, of what you're allowed to spend uh, other than, direct costs, right? All right. So that's enough on the indirect cost rate. It's one of my favorites, right, to talk about. Lastly, please talk to your financial people. There are no walls. It takes a team. And when I mean walls between departments and stuff, please find out who your finance person is because they are going to be a very, very important person to you. When you get into drawing down funds, there's a treasury system called ASAP, which you'll be using. But just in the Uniform Grant Guidelines, or also known as 2 CFR 200, there are cost principles, right? If you have not perused around 2 CFR 200, please do so because there are certain things like, even though, say I'm a one-woman show, managing all these grants, the thing is when a bill comes in, when an invoice comes in, right? And I look at it and I go, yeah, yeah, they did that work. They did that, all appropriate inquiries. Sure. Circle it, put my initials, approved. Okay, now, can I pay it? No, you're not supposed to, okay? You need to have checks and balances, right? So that goes to somebody else to draw down, right? If you are a small office, then you need to have procedures, written procedures in place, whether you're written large. This is all in 2 CFR 200, the cost principles of what the written minimum written documentation you need in your office to be handling federal awards. Okay. All right. So if you have other federal grants, please make sure that you have separate cost centers. Someone had said it's kind of like Ghostbusters where the streams can't cross. Okay, kind of like that, right? All right, great. Okay, so here's your action item. Make sure your UEI status is active and it's active for at least the next 6 months, okay? And if it's not, you know, get on it now. But put, let's say it expires May 1st. Put a reminder on your calendar, like third week in April to, activate it, renew it. Okay. The registration is free. There is no cost. Apparently, there have been some email scams and stuff where they're asking you to pay for your registration, SAMs, and the registration for the UEI is always free. So if you get something like that, it is not authentic. Okay. So the other thing is definitely make sure, I think I've said this already, but make sure the name matches the application on your grant application. Okay. And you'd be surprised. This does happen. So procurement readiness. I know it's my favorite. If everybody knows something about me, it's know your why and procurement. So procurement readiness. Now, does that mean I want you to start drafting an RFP? No. I do not want you drafting an RFP. What I want you focused on right now, when you get selected, when you get that email, get the forms in and get that work plan in. Okay. Get going on that draft work plan immediately. Okay. It takes longer than you think, but if you have any hiccups or any issues or you don't know where to start, please pick up the phone to CCLR, reach out to me, whatever. We'll get you sorted and get you going with your work plan. But procurement readiness is just understanding the process, okay? Making sure you have internal policies and procedures around procurement. It typically takes 3 months, and that's if everything goes accordingly, right? It's got to be published for 30 days. You have to do a cost price analysis prior to the publication, Appendix A of the EPA guide. The guides have been updated. And when I say guides, one here is linked. It's the best practices for procurement, right? Procuring services, goods, equipment. It was updated in September of 2025. But you also need to just confirm that your organization is in compliance with 2 CFR 200. If you receive, and you already have received federal funding, chances are you are. However, I've also worked with people who they haven't updated their procurement policies since like before the super circular came out. And the super circular is also known as 2 CFR 200. Before there were just circulars like A121, A80. There were 7 of them, and then they combined them all. Okay. So just document everything. You know, you're going to just be aware of what procurement is going to entail. Okay. Again, pick up the phone, call us, we'll get you through it. All right. Also, a little plug here, but CCLR's webinar on April 8th, Procurement 2.0. There have been major updates, and we're going to be doing a rapid fire 60 minutes. We're going to go over everything that has changed. Okay? All right. This is, again, required training. This is for all new recipients. Now, I know you're going to say, Joelle, what is a new recipient? I'm so glad you asked, because I'm going to read the definition from EPA. All new grant applicants and recipients, organizations, this means organizations that have never received an EPA grant, or if they last received an EPA grant before October 1st, 2014. Okay. The first bullet point here, EPA grants management training for applicants and recipients. This is 6 modules. And then the second one, how to develop a budget. This was also updated, as well as budget guidance. This was updated, and this is 4 modules. I believe someone had told me that to get through all the modules takes around 7 hours, give or take. That's what they said. Anyway, so this is before you have to do the training. Okay, they're like little online things, and there's the link for it. So, review the procurement guides, right? You got to be completing this training prior to receiving your grants, so that cooperative agreement, right? Just as an FYI, if you think hope for the best but prepare for the worst, we hope you receive your cooperative agreement by 10/1/2026. The chances, the majority of people, had a later start. Okay. Please remember that even if you have a late start, and unless your grant period gets moved by your project officer and you still start on 10/1, that's your period of performance, your reporting requirements are still going to require a quarterly report at the end of January, and probably in paper format, because if you don't have your cooperative agreement, you can't register for the Brownfields database, which is the acres, okay? Where you do your reporting and you put in your site data. All right, so not to get off on that, but if you need acres training, reach out. Nonprofit organizations, okay, receiving more than $200,000 in federal funds will be required to be pre-award certified. Okay, this lovely form, I clicked on it. That's why it's magenta now. But I put this form in here because it's actually a great form to see. It asks you a lot of questions about your financial, like administration. It really asks you some great questions and makes you ready to receive federal awards. So even if you've received federal awards before, I think it's a great form just to get you prepared, and just see how ready you are internally to like manage federal grants. Okay. But this is required for nonprofit organizations. Remember, we're in stage two right now, right? We're in segment two. So if selected, this form 6600-9 is going to be required, and you're going to be asked, why? Joelle, why are they doing this? I'll tell you why. Because most nonprofits usually don't get their monies from federal funds. They usually get them from private foundations, private donations. But this came to my attention working with a nonprofit who received a very large cleanup grant, and they filled out this form and just answered very honestly. Yes, yes, no, no, yeah. Okay, if you check a no, heads up, spoiler, if you check no on any of these boxes, it's going to basically trigger highly likely what's called a corrective action, administrative condition. I should say an administrative condition, not a corrective action, but an administrative condition. And all that means is that it's a condition that goes over your grant, kind of like an overlay, right? Uh, and you can still use your grant, you can still work your grant, but you're not going to be able to pull down or draw down funds until that administrative condition is lifted. All right. So just a heads up. Okay. Recap. Look at that. 2:54. We're on time. We're actually a little early. So, right? I'm not going to go over this. This is your recap. This is your check, right? Talking about your team, your work plan, your SAMs, right? And schedule out your required training. It's all online, by the way. So you can do it at your own pace. You don't have to take all 7 modules at the same time. Okay.
Hey, Joelle.
Yeah.
We also have a question in the chat actually related to the training. So Amy asked, is training required for new subrecipients as well?
You mean, okay, so the definition, so like new sub-recipients?
Right. I think like if the applicant names a subrecipient in their grant, are they
Mhm.
required to take the training as well?
Hmm. I'm going to say yes. And you know why? Because 2 CFR 200, we're going to go over this in the April 8th award. They have now changed it so that it used to be recipients, and now they've added subrecipients, recipients and subrecipients. So they've drawn them into the actual Code of Federal Regulation. I would say that the training is, it could go either way depending on what exactly you're doing. But if it's a pass through, right? I would definitely talk to the project officer and say, like, okay, you've been selected, right? And if you're already selected and you qualify as a new grantee, then I would definitely talk to the project officer and say, hey, this is my subrecipient, blah, blah, blah. I've done the training. Do they need to do the training? Um, you definitely are, subrecipients are now definitely included as responsible, directly responsible now into CFR 200. So the training, that's definitely, I can't say definitely, yes, you should be doing it, but it is actually good practice. And honestly, you know, the training videos I found um, to be educational, insightful, um, and give you insight. But not only that, it's like as a subrecipient, because you are um, receiving a subaward, right? The money is passing through the grantee. Um, there are certain things the grantee is going to hold you accountable. And there's a lot of required financial monitoring of the subrecipients. So the more that subrecipients know what they're going to be monitored on, the better chances that you're going to come through and be like, great. Like there's not going to be any surprises of what you're going to be held to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds great, Joelle.
Okay. Just if you have additional questions, Amy, just reach out. All right. Nobody likes surprises, right, in federal awards. I certainly don't want to be monitored. That's for sure. Um, okay. So we talked about the mindset shift before in the very beginning, right? Just don't sit back on your laurels right now. There's plenty of things to do. We are now going to do another mindset shift because, right, we've gone into segment 3. Now, I changed this slide if not selected, right? Um, I don't want to use the words losers, right? But participatory award doesn't get you anything, right? So if you're not selected, we're pivoting with purpose, right? So one of the biggest things is the no is not a dead end. If you think about just the sheer number of brownfield properties that are out there, underutilized properties, whatever you want to call them, right? As a planner, I've been in so many communities where there was no brownfields funding, or there was brownfield funding. But just because you don't get brownfields funding, right, there isn't enough brownfield funding to like go to everybody. So what do those communities do, right? Who's the one entity that's on here that wasn't selected? What did you do, right? No is not a dead end. It's basically somebody saying like, not yet, right? Or maybe this isn't for you. Rejection is redirection, right? I know. We can have so many t-shirts, right? But it really is information. It's intel. First and foremost, grieve. And I mean this, grieve. Like, you know, I don't know, break some things, whatever, Nerf footballs, I don't know. Um, I I have been very I don't want to say lucky, but as a practitioner and I've been writing these, applications for many years. And there's a cadence. Okay. So I can only say that the best training is to go when they publish the successful grants that were selected, to download as many as possible and read them. There is a certain cadence to them that are selected. There's certain data that is hitting the right notes. You know a compelling story. You know the compelling need. Like when you read a really, really well-crafted grant, um, like I can tell when one is going to be awarded and when one just has missed the mark. I'm sure Devin can too. You read enough of them and you're just like, yeah, boy, nope. You know, um, the feedback is given with good intentions. So first grieve and be like, you know what? Do that blameless autopsy, whatever, but grieve and then say, all right, let's get to work. Like we still have a site, we still have needs, right? So how are we going to address those needs? Um, there's been plenty of times when not just EPA funding or, like HUD funding, CDBG, right? When the federal buffet table is no longer there, right? And you don't have the funding or it's limited or whatever, grassroots, crowdsourcing, whatever it is, where there's a will, there is absolutely a way. Okay. Um, you know, I would say necessity is the mother of invention, right? you will find that path. And at the right time, do a resource roadmap, right? Reach out. We can help, right? But grieve and then time to get in there, right? Get your free debrief, compare that, to the blameless autopsy when you get the debrief. Um, Build those deeper partnerships, not just, hey, we're applying for a grant. Do you want to be part of our coalition? Right? Really get in there, get into the whys, get into the SEDS, the comprehensive economic development strategies, go into a regional level, talk to the long range planners, get in front of your state legislature, right? Reach out to see clear. The thing is requesting your debrief within 15 days. Okay. Please do not miss this time frame. It is a very small window. 15 days from the date of that email. Haha, how many times have I said that email, right? This is why it's imperative to know who is on that roster, who is your team, who is that person, that email. Because if that email comes through and on the 16th day you get a sorry, you were not selected, and you're like, we just missed our opportunity to get a debrief, right? You don't want that happening. So please, please, please make sure whoever's email that is, they are around. They're still around, it's still active. And also maybe put um, I'm not a tech person, right? But have your IT person be like, I don't know, if anything comes in, those rules and stuff. If you receive an email from EPA, alert this, the following people too, whatever. Um, I had certain rules like that when I was doing on the county because the county, it's big, right? A lot of people. So be cognizant of the 15 days. The verbal, you're not going to get anything in writing after the debrief. Okay. So you're going to request it in writing, right? Thank you very much. We'd love to have a debrief, right? Um, yes, they are required to respond to you in a timely manner to schedule a debrief and to have one, but there is no specific timeline or date. People usually get their debriefs. I mean, come on, the project officers are working on work plans and getting things in and right they're still doing the other grants, right? Quarterly reports and all that other stuff. Um, you may get a debrief in late summer, midsummer, late summer. I can guarantee you're probably not going to get a debrief in June. All right. So it's coming. Just be ready. The reviewer may or may not have comments. So they're coming like 9 and 10, but the people who review your grants are not in 9 and 10. So they don't know, like that reviewer may or may not have comments. You might just have the application score. These grants were lost by 1 point. Okay. You want to note where you lost points. Okay. If they have possible suggestions, the thing is they can't coach. They need to be extremely objective. They have parameters that they need to stay within to, make sure there's no biases. Anyway, take notes. There's no follow-up email that says, here are the following things that we discussed from EPA. Nothing. So please, please, please take notes. All right. Find out what the weak areas were. So here's your action item. Probably nobody's going to do this because they're going to mess with their manifestation or whatever. But trust me, just write a draft email that just says, hey, thank you for your email. We would love a debrief, right? Do not send it, right? Just wait. Don't send, but at least you're ready, right? Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. All right. So what are you going to do now? All right. You're going to strengthen for the next round. You're going to use the debrief, right? You're going to look at your blameless autopsy too, because your team has already done an internal, review and said, we think it's strong, but we could have been stronger in this area. Our data could have been strong. Our partnership was a little weak here, right? Okay. Work with the CCLR Mark team. We have seen more and more grants come to us, like draft grant applications, narratives. come from grant writers, consultants. Um, it's very obvious because there's missing the missing sauce. The secret sauce is not there because only you guys know the secret sauce of your communities. And that secret sauce needs to be in the application. That why is your secret sauce. Okay. So look at your revision strategies here as far as the weaknesses being noted. How can you even strengthen even the most strongest areas of your application? Was it a technical issue? Um, you know, by making stronger commitments, this is what I mean. When language is, um, we we're going to do, or we will try, right? We will try to um, more than that, you're going to say, we will provide, just stronger language, right? We're encouraging blah, blah, blah. If there's not very strong language, like we are definitely doing this, we're taking proactive steps, not reactive steps, right? That comes across a lot better than the passive language. Okay. So having fostered relationships, I, I'd rather see we've been working with these partners for 5 years. For the past year, we have been meeting regularly on this particular target area, and we've already, working with a community-based organization, the leaders. You get the drift, right? Okay. And sometimes, guys, it wasn't the right funding. Afterwards, I was talking to a grantee last year, and once I was, or the year before that, they had applied for an RLF. I was confused. And once they understood the RLF a little better, they were like, whoa, that is definitely not the grant for us. And I was like, great, let's look at other opportunities. And we found a better fit for them. Okay. All right. This kind of speaks for itself. Track changes version, just take out your Word document um, and start doing track changes on it. Okay. Each section, the debrief, and then, your comment boxes could be like, all right, go to CDC, go to NEPA Assist, go to FEMA, for this kind of data. Yeah, we totally blew it on the task. Review past successful grants for, cleanup tasks. I can tell you that if I read it's going to be a 5-year grant and you're going to do 12 quarterly reports, something's not adding up there, right? Okay, get what I mean. So pursue, again, we're in segment 3 for those not selected. Pursue alternative funding now. Okay. So once you get the thanks, but no thanks, we appreciate you applying, but you've not been selected, you're going to send that email. Yes, we want to debrief. And now you're going to pursue alternative funding. If you don't feel like pursuing alternative funding, then the why either has changed, and that's totally, totally acceptable, um, or it just wasn't that important to begin with, right? That's fine. Just do an honest review. Um, just don't wait till a FY27 vote because guess what's going to happen? Okay. What you're doing now is preparing to make your application even stronger, right? So if you're just going to wait till the NOFO comes out, right? Okay, well, maybe cleanup funding doesn't go up to 4 million. Maybe it's only 1 million now, right? That's cool. Well, what are we going to do? Well, we have these partners. We have a public-private partnership that we're working on. We're working with that state agency because they have an RLF fund, whatever. Start getting your possible alternatives to addressing the issue. If it's not high on your things to do or goals, then don't. I'm not a person that says that these grants are for everyone. Okay. All right. So I've got 311, and yet the thing says I'm hoping that that clock timer is It's probably when we started before this started. Anyway, here's your action item, right? Identify two non-EPA funding sources. Track the deadlines. All right, we're going to go over this. Look, I'm not telling you to do an environmental review. What I'm trying to say is, you know, that windshield survey that you're doing and stuff, do your own assessments. I'm not saying phase ones, you're not QEPs. Maybe you are, some of you in the audience, but look, technically I'm a QEP, but I don't want to be called a QEP. All right. I don't want that liability and stuff. So be a detective, do a little digging, and I mean that pun intended, right? But go in and you're like, oh yeah, that property on Main Street, yeah, who owns that? Do a property record search, look at Enviroflex, all these public resources are fantastic for digging up dirt on what has happened on that property. Start a conversation with the property owner. I can't tell you how many misconceptions have happened with idle properties, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, that business owner doesn't own the property? Some company in Minnesota owns it? Right. So just because a business is there, that doesn't necessarily mean that that business owns the property. Okay. All right. Here's your recap. Quick debrief, grieve, grieve. Don't skip that, please. And then do your recap stuff, right? And you'll be good to go. Right. Reach out to us. Segment 4, here we are, the good stuff. Questions and answers. Closing and takeaways. Okay. Don't stop. Please don't stop your momentum. That's the biggest thing. Winners, draft your work plans, get those out the door and your forms like immediately. Non-selectees, see, I didn't say losers, right? Analyze and pivot and turn your no into, another opportunity, and come back stronger. So with that, we're giving you the boot. No, just kidding. We're going to take your questions and have conversations and just talk about the now what.